Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and our continued coverage of Dinosaur World. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up and then play Dinosaur World. So I am going to cover the setup for a standard game and then let you know what the difference would be if you were setting up solo, and then I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to play a game, and then again cover the steps of things that would be different if you were playing solo. So look for the timestamps if you are just looking for how to play solo and you already understand the basic rules, or you can skip over the solo parts. So first thing you're going to want to do is set up the public action boards. These are the three large island looking boards, and this is going to represent your attractions, your DNA dice, dinosaur paddocks, and your special buildings. For your attractions, you're simply going to want to take the matching tiles of each type and just stack them one on top of the other, like so. They are all exactly the same, so they don't have to be shuffled, they don't have to be face down. They just go right there. Next up, you are going to want to shuffle all of your dinosaur paddock tiles, including ones if you are playing with one of the expansions. Go ahead and shuffle them up and then deal one out, starting from the furthest arrow. If you can see, there's a glare here, but these arrows indicate where the paddocks are going to travel at the end of the round and which ones will be discarded at the end of the round. So you always want to push this way and fill in then from here. This is where you put your DNA dice, but you don't actually put those out during setup. Next over here is your special buildings tile, and what you're going to want to do is create 3 stacks, all shuffled, of your A, B, and C buildings. So you can see here A, B, C, and then you're going to want to stack all the C's on the bottom, then the B's, then the A's, and then you'll draw from the A's, and again fill in backwards the first time, and then after that you're always going to want to fill in closest to the stack. So you can see there's a much bigger stack of special buildings versus dinosaur paddocks. If you start adding in expansions, this tile stack will get bigger. Also, if you ever run out of dinosaur tiles, you just shuffle the ones that have been discarded and create a new stack, whereas special buildings, you don't ever shuffle that stack. If you run out of the stack or run out of buildings, you have no more buildings to play with. That's essentially the setup here, but then of course, being the table hog that it is, you're going to want to create common areas where everyone can reach them, of all of your worker meeples, all of your dinosaurs, your death tokens, your death dice or your danger dice, as well as your coins, whether you have the cardboard ones or the metal ones. So essentially all of this, and your boredom tokens. So essentially you need to figure out a way to get all of this within general reach of everyone at the table. Now that's not necessarily possible, so what we generally do is create a couple piles of these where everybody can reach a set. One person is in charge of doling out dinosaurs, kind of like the banker in Monopoly, and also one person is in charge of doling out the death tokens. Put the money where everyone can reach it. These, obviously, there's only so many of these. You could throw those right here or something. And then I put the boredom tokens in this because this is easily passed around, and they're so tiny that you don't want to lose them either. You don't want to just have this stack of those sitting on the table. So this is essentially everything that you need to set up that's all kind of public domain. So let's take a look at a few more things that we need to set up that everybody is going to be looking at, and then we'll take a look at our personal player boards. This is the public notice board. So this is very important because it's going to give you your turn order, which is going to be adjusted at the beginning of each round. It's going to give you, let you know which round you're on, and kind of give you hints at you know, what you should be doing at that point. It's going to give you your excitement level, which is also going to be reset at the end of every round, but tells you how much income you're going to get at the end of a round. And it gives you your victory points, which are tracked and accumulated throughout the game. So each person who is playing is going to take 3 of their cubes and place them all like so, depending on who the first person who's nominated to be the first player. You know, you would set this up here, but then after that, after the first round, whoever is behind in the game gets the turn order. So say it was like this, green player would be the first player. And again, excitement, we'll talk about this when we talk about how to play, but that's tracked and then reset, and the victory points always stay as is. So this one purple and pink cube here that doesn't match any of the player colors, this is your round marker. So you'll start with it up here on the 1, and you'll do the entire first round. Then you move down here. This is just to simply remind you, hey, everybody's excitement level goes back to 0. You go down here, same thing, everybody back to 0, 3, back to 0, and at the end of round 3 is when you do a flip of your welcome center, and you actually move it to the other end of your park. We'll again talk more about that later, but basically once you get to the end of the 5th round, the game is over. There are rules in the game about extending the game if you would like to go into, say, a 6th or 7th round. It's really up to you, but the standard game is 5 rounds. You also want to make sure that you have the worker database cards sitting around. Again, this is probably a job that you want to give to a particular individual to keep these shuffled and then be dealing them out. But these essentially are going to give you your worker pool for each round. So you're not going to know. It's going to be random, but you can see for the most part, you know, you're always going to get 4 white workers. They're not specializing in anything. But then, for example, this one has no green workers. These 2 have no purple workers. So again, in turn order, the first player in turn order is going to get to choose this, and then you go around and you always deal out 1 more than there are players. So even the last person gets a choice. So these just kind of need to be somewhere where they can easily be accessible. Also, you have all of your DNA dice here. You're going to want to go ahead and take all of these and put them into the bag. If you have the Kickstarter version, it's going to look like this, and just set those off to the side for later. Last thing is we need to establish what our objectives are for the game. Now there are all the objective cards, you know, look like this, but you can see they are even color coded on the front, and they have a big letter on the back. So you're going to want to make sure you randomly draw one from each stack, because it does make a difference. You wouldn't want all B's because they would conflict with each other. So you're going to, you know, randomly draw one here. Let's push this up. There's an A. Let's take this B, and we'll take this C. So again, you're going to want to put these in an area where everybody can see them, and it may take you a little while to understand the iconography, but you can see here at a quick glance, you have an A, you have a B, you have a C. Also the colors in the background match. But at any point in time, a player, if they satisfy what this objective is, they can take one of their not their Jeeple, but their Jeeple tokens, which look like this, cardboard tokens with a picture of their Jeeple on it, and claim the leftmost slot of VP and instantly, you know, take that many victory points. The next person to do it, you can see, is only going to get, you know, that many points, so less points. And then if you're playing with 4 or more people, the 4th person can't even gain any points from it. Essentially, this means right here, if you have 3 herbivores and 3 large carnivores in your park, claim it. This one, you're going to want to basically have a, I forget what this symbol means here. What does this symbol mean? This means social building. A social building, a security building, a administrative building, at least 1 small carnivore and at least 1 herbivore. So that's quite a mix, but it's pretty easy to hit that mix. And then this last one is 20 total DNA of any type in storage. So that means, you know, at any point, if you look down at your board and you see that you have 20 total between the 6 columns, you can claim this one. And you can see obviously this is much more difficult to get than this, and this is actually not quite easy, but easier than the other ones, so less reward for the top one. But just know that you need to deal out 3 objective cards, and they need to be one from each of the various stacks. And that is it for all of the kind of public stuff. So stuff that needs to be within sight and within reach of all the players. Let's now take a look at your individual player board setup. So these 2 boards represent your player boards. This is your DNA storage, your threat and security tracker, and also your Jeeple Tour tracker, how far your Jeeple Tour can go. Then you have your area of your park that's kind of like behind the scenes. You never tour this area, but this is where you get your private actions done. And then from here to the right is where you're going to start building out your park, and everybody starts with a welcome center tucked right there in the middle. And to my knowledge, I don't think it says anywhere that the welcome center has to be in the middle, but maybe it does. Anyways, I think actually it does. But you do want to make sure that you have room to expand off to the right, because your park is going to grow in that direction. But once you have your setup like this, you're also going to want to take all of the pieces that belong to your individual faction or player color. So you can see just about everything in this bin here, except for these 50, 10, 20 tokens here, is this kind of light shade of teal or bluish green or whatever you want to call it. So my storage solution has this, so I can just hand this to people and they can pull from it or dump it out however they see fit. If you're interested in seeing my full storage solution for the base game and the expansions, check out the video that's going to be popping up in the upper right corner right now. But what you're going to want to do is take most of this stuff, and you can probably throw, you're going to want to keep 2 arrows out. So let's set those aside. You can throw all the rest of the arrows back in, and you can throw your Jeeple tokens back in there. You're going to want to take your Jeeple, put it at your welcome center, and then you're going to want to take all of your cubes and start filling out your DNA. So you're going to start with 2 of the basic DNA, which is the yellow, red, and blue, and then these more pastel colors, you get 1 of each to start with. This is the advanced DNA. You're going to start at 0 threat, 0 security, and down here at the bottom of your Jeeple track. Again, you should have 3 left over. Those go to the public notice board. You're also going to want to take these tokens here, the ones that are in your color but don't have the picture of your Jeeple on it. Those go away for right now. And these are your Jeeple Tour bonus tokens. So at the end of every round, you're going to gain what's on these, and the higher up this Jeeple track you get, the more of these that you're going to have to put out. But you can see there's a slot way down here at the beginning. So right off the bat, you get to pick one of these and gain it instantly. So this is gain a worker of any type, this is gain 2 coins, this is gain 1 security, any 1 advanced DNA, and any 2 regular DNA. So let's just say you do this, you can instantly claim 1 security. The rest of these can go back over here, easily accessible, because every time you cross one of these bars here and make it up into a new realm, you get a new Jeeple bonus. So, and then also you're going to want to have these handy in case you get to +10 or +20 security, +10 or +20 threat, and or 50 or above 100 on the victory point tracker. And that is essentially it for setting up your personal area. You also, especially if it's your first time playing, you're going to want to get these 2 reference cards. They're double-sided. So the blue here, all the public actions, the yellow here, all the private actions that you can take, your overall round summary, and on the back, your end game scoring condition. The most important part here is the kind of negative victory points you're going to gain based on your death count. So this was very important to keep handy, so you know what you're getting into. But make sure you have these, especially if you are starting off for the first time. So if you are setting up for a solo game, essentially you want to go ahead and set up for a 2-player game. The only difference is that the AI does not need any sort of DNA storage board or park board or anything like that. You just need your board, and then you set everything else up. The things that you do need to get out that are different for AI setup are your specialist cards and your AI cards. So let's take a look at the specialist cards first. You can either randomly choose 2 of these, or you can just go through and pick any 2. Each one of these has a unique ability that's going to assist you in throughout the game, because there are going to be some times where you feel like you're missing out, or it's not quite fair, mainly when you're trying to meet the objectives that we're going to look at here in just a moment. But you'll notice that each of these have a specific worker placement requirement. For example, the architect here is any Meeple, or the HR manager is any type of Meeple. And these are available to you at any point during the game. You have to place a worker from your standard pool onto the card, but then you get what's below. Then you leave that there. So keep that into consideration. So essentially the Dino Wrangler can be used 3 times throughout the entire game. After you use him 3 times, he's no longer available. But if you happen to not use a specialist, you will gain the victory points at the bottom. But the second you use him, you might as well go use him a second or third time, because you've already lost your 5 points. But some of these guys you get into a bind. For example, I personally love the HR manager here. You can see that you can put any type of Meeple down and you get any 2 of your choice in return. So not only are you gaining an extra Meeple, but you can turn a white Meeple into 2 of any color of your choice. So you're going to want to go ahead and select 2 of these and go ahead and place them in front of you. And then you're going to want to take your solo AI cards, which are right here. You're going to want to give them a shuffle, and you're going to deal yourself 8 total cards. Now, these first 8 cards that you deal yourself are going to be your solo objectives that you're trying to meet. So you're going to want to turn the cards so that you can read the word objective. Now, you can look at these at your leisure, and you need to decide which of these you think you can obtain. Now, if you are feeling brazen and you feel like you could actually get all 8, then go for it. Then keep all 8. You can, however, discard 3. So you have to have at least 5 objectives, basically 1 per round. But unlike Dinosaur Island, you don't necessarily have to complete 1 each round. So you can see that some are harder than others, but all of them have the same iconography as the standard objective cards. But what they also have is a round bonus. So let's just look at this one. For example, this one wants you to have obtained the 4 basic attractions. If you have each of the basic attractions in your park, at the end of the round, you can claim 3 bonus points. You go ahead and claim it, you flip this card over. If, however, you have done this before the end or by the end of round 2, you're going to get an additional 5. So 8 total victory points for completing that objective. Now, you're not going to be able to do all of them. I guess you could, but that would probably be the most amazing game of Dinosaur World ever. So you definitely want to look through your objectives, figure out which ones you can accomplish, and then if you so choose, return 3 back to your AI deck here. So then you want to put these off to the side where you can reference them. You don't have to, they don't have to be laid out. You could put them in a pile if you want, but because this game's already a table hog. But then you're going to want to take the remainder of your AI cards, shuffle the ones that you saw back into the deck, and then this is going to stay put off to the side until we're ready to play. That is it for the solo setup. The only other thing that they say you'll need is a second set of resource cubes. You really only need a couple, 3 3 to 5 maybe is probably going to be enough to play with. So you could easily just pull out 3 to 5. These are going to mark off spaces that dinosaurs have escaped from in their paddocks. That way you can't create a dinosaur and fill in that paddock when you have a rampaging dinosaur running around your park. But we'll talk more about that after we've talked about how to play the basic game. Okay, so before play officially begins, we need to have a initial tile draft. We need to establish the bones, no pun intended, of our park. So you're actually going to get a dinosaur paddock and a starting special building for free right off the bat. So there are, if you and most of the people you're playing with are playing for the first time, there are suggested pairings to just randomly hand out to people. But for the most part, once you've played a couple times, you're going to want to take, after you have dealt out the tiles to the public boards, you're going to want to take the top 3 dinosaur paddock tiles, put those out, and the top 3 special buildings, and these are all should come from the A stack, and put those out. Now at this point, hopefully you've established who the first player is, and so the first player is going to get to pick either their dinosaur pen or their special building, and then it's going to snake in player order. And so you don't have to take, if say first player takes the dinosaur, the second player can take a special building. But whenever you get to the last player, they're actually going to claim both, and then it's going to snake backwards so that the first player gets the very last pick. Now, what I have essentially set up here is for a 2-player game. You're going to want to put out a number of tiles equal to the number of players plus 1, so that even that last player who gets the dinosaur tiles has 1 that they can, or 2 to choose from. Same thing with the special buildings. In this phase, you cannot draft, say, 2 dinosaur paddocks. You cannot draft 2 special buildings. It has to be 1 dinosaur paddock and 1 special building. All right, so let's just say, for example, I was, drafting here. I may say, okay, I want to play it safe for a little while, so I'm going to draft the Brontosaurus pen. And then in a 2-player game, the other person may say, I'm going to go for, I'm not going to worry about death. I'm going to try and accumulate as many points as possible. So I'm going to take the Danger Tour and the T-Rex here, put those away. Now, essentially, this one is no longer available. It comes back to me. And I'm going to look at this one and say, ooh, Prehistoric Garden matches up nicely with the herbivores I'm already having in my, and I can put that there. You could put it down here. You could put it here. As long as it touches at least one full edge of one of your parks, it's perfectly legal. All right. So this now is essentially your starting park setup. Okay, so the first official phase of every round is the hire workers phase. So this is where you're going to want to take your worker database cards. Again, you're going to take a number of cards equal to the amount of players plus 1. So in a 2-player game, you would deal out 3 cards. And again, the first player is going to get their choice of which card they choose. And then once you have chosen the card, you're going to want to actually collect that amount of people from your pile of meeples. So you can see there's a visual reference here, but there's also the just counts here on the bottom. And just for reference, I believe like purples are always going to be first in order, then greens, then blues, then yellows, and then whites. And I believe there is a reason for these letters here at the bottom, but I'm not 100% sure what they are. But essentially, first player drafts 1, second player drafts 1. If you were playing a 3rd and 4th player game, they would all draft 1. Once you have gotten your worker pool and your meeples, these can go into a pile. And this pile is going to run out, especially it's going to run a lot sooner if you're playing with 4 people. You simply shuffle this up when you've run out of cards and start dealing from it again. Okay, so once you have your worker pool, it's time to start spending some of those workers. And the second phase of every round is the public actions phase. And this is actually the only phase of Dinosaur Island that is not simultaneous. which helps speed up the game. So all of your private actions and your Jeeple tours can always be done simultaneously, so you can be working on them same time as the person next to you. But you do need to do, I guess technically the hire workers phase you need to do in turn order, but that's very quick. But this one you're going to do in turn order. Now, there's no actually blocking of spaces here. You don't actually ever put a worker on a space like that. You simply are going to return them to the supply once you've spent them, but technically you could be really wanting the hadrosauruses and someone could steal that tile from you. So really the only player to player interaction in the game is kind of fighting over the tiles, but not even necessarily fighting over spaces. So let's just quickly go through what public actions you can take. There's actually only 4 of them, and so it's pretty straightforward. You always have the opportunity to buy an attraction. Now, you actually don't even need a worker to buy an attraction. These are your very basic buildings, and again, everything in this stack is the same, so it doesn't matter who gets to it first. There's always going to be enough there for all the players. You simply just have to pay the amount of money that's in the upper left corner here, and you get to add this tile to your park. Now, the trick with any tile you see here, as soon as you buy it, it has to be added to your park immediately. Now, other than the dinosaur tiles, which we'll talk about in a second, the paddock tiles, it doesn't matter where these tiles are added to as long as they share an edge with another tile that's already in your park. But some of the tiles will make a difference when you're going to either score victory points or excitement. For example, the roller coaster tile here is going to give you +1 excitement per tile that's adjacent to it. So that's what this symbol right here means. So you're going to want to make sure you place your roller coaster tile in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff, or place it somewhere where you know you're going to build around it to score the maximum amount of points. But other than that, the attractions, there's always going to be those 4 attractions, and you can never have more than one of this each type of building. You can only ever have 1 security, 1 roller coaster, 1 restaurant, and 1 merchandise shop. So you can't go in and just buy up a bunch of roller coasters and not even have any dinosaurs in your Dinosaur World. Moving over here, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, technically at the beginning of the public action phase, you need to roll out your DNA dice, and I apologize, I missed that. But depending on the number of players you're playing with, it's going to be the number of players +2. So in a 2-player game, we're going to draw 4 dice out of our dice bag, we're going to roll them out, and then you just place them here. It really doesn't matter. But now, people can spend workers to claim these dice, and just like Dinosaur Island, add the DNA to their DNA storage. Now, the trick here is that you could send, say, or spend, I'm putting them here just for representation, but essentially you would just say, all right, I'm spending 3 workers, and say, for example, if you send 3 workers to claim this 1 die with 3 yellow basic DNA on it, you're actually going to get 9 yellow DNA, because it's the number of workers that you turn in times what's on this face. So if you were to claim this one, you can get 6 of any type of basic DNA that you so choose. All right. So, and you have to decide when you pull the DNA die. You can't go, all right, I'm going to pull this one, and then after you've spent it later on down the road, I'll be like, I want to go back and claim this one. That's not how it works. But you could say, all right, I want to claim this one, and then as it comes back around to you, you could go out and say, I can claim this one. As long as there's DNA dice available, when it's your turn, you can spend a worker to pick up a die, remove it from the gather DNA action, and recover that DNA into your storage. Now, the trick with the various colors of the meeples is that each different color, which represents a different type of worker, has a bonus that they can give you when claiming certain DNA dice or buying certain buildings or things like that. So the first one we're going to talk about is the scientist. If you use a scientist to gather DNA, and you could even spend 2 scientists, you are going to get the amount of DNA that you see on the die face plus an additional DNA of your choice. It's basically like getting a wild DNA for free. So if, say for example, I were to send 2 scientists and claim this die, I am going to get 4 total basic DNA, but then 2 any DNA, and those could be advanced DNA in this step. So if you're going to be claiming DNA, you can use, I could send a purple worker, it doesn't matter. You can use any color worker, but if you send a scientist, you're going to get bonus DNA in return. All right, the next thing you can do here is to build a dino paddock. So when you're looking here, you're not gaining any threat. You're actually also not gaining any excitement or victory points. All you're doing is you're building the space to then create dinosaurs in the future. So know that in advance. You can actually build a dinosaur paddock and then not even put a dinosaur in it for a round or 2, and it's not going to hurt you in any way, but it's not going to help you in any way. Now, to build a dinosaur paddock, you're going to have to pay the cost. They're pretty cheap, 1 coin, 2 coin, 1 coin, but you're also going to have to spend 2 workers. It takes a lot of workers to build up these big, large pens and make sure they're safe. So you need to spend 2 workers plus the money. Then you simply claim this and add it to your park. Now, however, if you have a green worker, which suspiciously looks like someone who spared no expense, if you use a green worker, you only have to use 1 worker. So if you are planning on building a dinosaur pen, you could use, again, any 2 workers you so choose, but if you have a green one, it's only going to cost you 1 worker. You still have to pay the money, but you're going to be able to save a worker for use later. Now, the only restriction on placing tiles other than sharing an edge with one other tile already in your park is that you cannot put 2 dinosaurs side by side. They don't like it. The plant eaters are worried that the meat eaters are gonna come over and eat them, and 2 meat eaters right next to each other are just gonna try and fight with each other and break down the walls, and it doesn't work. So according to the rules, you may not place 2 dinosaur paddocks adjacent to each other. So that's the only placement rule, is that you kind of have to spread your dinosaurs out. So if you don't have a legal place to put a dinosaur paddock, then you can't purchase one. Last but not least, we have our special buildings. Special buildings don't have any worker bonus with them. You simply spend 1 worker of any color, even the white ones work, and then you pay the money. Now you can see these are more expensive, and they're going to get more expensive, but these also offer you a lot of fun things to think about. So let's cover them all. First of all, for example, the amber extraction here, you can see has the lightning bolt symbol and then a victory point symbol. Anytime you see the lightning bolt, that's going to be instantly gain, and in this case 3 VP. All right, for example, if we look over here at our Dilophosaurus, as you build or create the dinosaurs and put them in the pen, you're going to instantly gain threat, but also VP. So always keep an eye out for that lightning bolt symbol. That means you get it instantly. But so we have instantly gain up here, we have how much it costs, and then right here we have what it takes to activate this building. This one in particular takes a scientist to activate, and then this is what you gain if you activate it. That's important because you have to activate the building in order to gain the excitement, which is this number here at the bottom. So amber extraction, when you first build it, people are probably like, ooh, that's cool. But then, once people have gone and seen it once or twice, they get pretty bored with it. But you need to have a blue worker to activate this building. So if you haven't figured it out already, there's actually 3 phases to this game where you need to be prepared to spend workers. So this is like viticulture on steroids. Viticulture is very famous for having to hold off workers from the spring season to the fall season, and you know, not blowing all your workers in that first season so that you can have some to actually like make wine and sell the wine and so on and so forth. Well, this is 3 seasons essentially. You have your public action season, then your private action season, which we'll look at next, and then your Jeeple Tour, which you're going to be activating these special buildings. So Meeple management is a big part of this game. You're going to get, you know, I think it's like 9 meeples every turn, plus you could gain some more in other ways, but you need to spread those 9 out over 3 different phases. So that's pretty much it. The only other thing on these that you want to pay attention to is, for example, this symbol here. This is a security building of sorts, whereas this one is a science building, and this one is administrative building. So keeping up with these symbols, also these symbols up here on the dinosaurs, it goes towards your objectives. If you recall, let me see if I can find one here. These are all DNA. Yeah, for example, this card here, you would need this type of building. You could have this one and this one. We don't have a social one out right now. And then you would need 1, 2, 3. Man, this is a really tough one. This is really like spreading your wings. But knowing that those symbols are there is important for fulfilling your objectives. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is all it takes, or all the actions that you can take during the public actions phase. And again, this is the only phase where you have to play in turn order, where, you know, other than just choosing your worker database card, you have to go in turn order, and at any point you can pass. At any point you can say, all right, I'm saving my workers for the other rounds, and then you're just skipped in every further rotation. People can continue taking actions as much as they want until they choose to pass, or they have no more workers to spend. And even then, if you have the money, you can buy one of these attractions because you don't even need a worker for that. So let's now take a look at what your options are for private actions. Okay, so all of your private actions, again, this entire phase can be taken simultaneously along with all the other players. But all of your private actions can be found here in kind of the, you know, behind the scenes area of your park. Everything else is also listed out here on this card, which on the other side is your public actions. So again, keep that handy if you're just learning how to play. So you've got your worker pool here, which is slightly smaller than it was before. And again, you can take as many or as little few actions. You can even pass immediately as you so choose. And when you pass, you just simply let everyone else know I'm done, so that you guys can move on to the Jeeple Tour phase. But let's talk about what your options are here. One is DNA refinement. Now, each of these you can see actually has little spots to place workers. So you can only do each action up to 3 times. So you cannot make more than 3 dinosaurs per round unless you have a special tile. You cannot increase your security more than 3 times per round. But when you go to spend a worker here, as opposed to just throwing it back into the supply, you're actually going to want to put it on your board. So up here at the top, we have DNA refinement. This is what you would use if you have a particular type of DNA that you need to create a dinosaur and you're short, but you have, say, a lot of other DNA. So in this instance, you can spend any worker. So you could do this to do DNA refinement. And you simply look at the chart here. So if you needed a purple, you could spend a red and a blue to gain a purple. Or you could go vice versa. You could say, all right, I'm going to give up an advanced to gain a red and a blue. So you just look at this chart. The arrow goes both ways. If, however, you happen to spend a scientist, not only do you get to do the conversion, but you get a basic DNA of your choice. So if we did this conversion and we said, all right, I'm going to give up my purple to get here and here, I could also gain 1, and that could be what my final board looks like. So that's the bonus for the scientist. Down here at VIC funding or VC funding, this is essentially just getting money. And it's important that you place your workers from left to right. This is the only one that matters. But the first worker you're going to place down is going to get you 3 coins. The second worker, 2, and the third worker, 1. However, if you send Mr. Moneybags, spare no expense, he's going to get you whatever's underneath him plus 1. So in this instance, he would get you 4. Over here at security, you place a worker here, and then you have to pay, unfortunately, to increase your security. And so you look at these bars here, and whichever area you are entering into, you pay that much. So this move would have taken me 1, but this move here would have cost me 2 coins. If, however, you use one of your rancher meeples, your security meeples, he gets a -1 discount on that action. I honestly don't know why it's a plus sign. I feel like it should be a minus sign. You know, the worker -1 coin, but essentially you're gaining a coin, I guess, by doing it, which you're gonna immediately spend. I don't know. But say for example, you're all the way up here and you place a worker here, you would get to bump up to here for 3 coins instead of 4. Down here is how you advance your Jeeple garage. So again, similar to the security, every step you move into, you have to pay the coin. So you place a worker here, you pay 1 coin, you move this up. The key is crossing these benchmarks here. Not only does it get more expensive, 2, but now you also get an additional amount of arrows to spend during your Jeeple Tour. So you're always going to start with 2. That means basically you can visit 2 tiles from the Welcome Center. So you can go here and here. But if you make it up here, you can see your number increases to 3. You get a 3rd arrow. You could start from the Welcome Center and go 1, 2, 3. Visit all those places. Also, every time you cross a threshold here, you get to add another bonus token. So say for example, I cross that threshold, I would put this in there. I instantly gain 2 basic, in this case, basic DNA. So I could go boom, boom. And then at the end of every round, you're going to gain all these bonuses as well. So that's something to consider. Ooh, I need 1 more security, or ooh, I need 2 more DNA, but I can't give them up here doing this. You could say slot, bump up your Jeeple garage and slot that token in there or something like that. So, but again, if you use the purple worker, the amount you have to spend is going to be 1 less. And then last but not least is your Make Dinosaurs action. It does not matter who you send here. Nobody gets a bonus for making dinosaurs. But when you send a worker here, that's when you then start looking at your dinosaur paddock here. So, for example, if I wanted to create a Hadrosaurus, I need to always spend a yellow and a red DNA. Here I go boom, and that DNA has been spent. But I also need to spend for whatever paddock or slot I'm filling. So in this case, the first one needs an additional yellow. Then I can pick up my Hadrosaurus from my giant pile of green plastic dinosaurs and place it here. When I do, I instantly gain 1 threat. So this goes up 1. But I also instantly gain 2 victory points. Then once this is covered up, you ignore this. You don't gain this number each round. You're then looking at the bottom here during your Jeeple Tour. But that's essentially it for building a Hadrosaurus. You can see the more and more you get, the more expensive it gets. Your additional basic becomes additional advanced. But also, your threat increases, but your VP increases as well. But that is the Make Dinosaur action. Again, there is no special worker to use here. You can use as many white workers as you want, or any color worker for that matter. Ironically enough, the scientist doesn't get you anything there. I felt like they would have, but they're already getting you a lot with the DNA. All right, so I'm going to push this off to the side here a little bit. And just to remind you that depending on where you are on this track, so if we were all the way up here, we would get a 4th arrow to work with. But we're just going to say that we're back down here at 3, and we're going to run our Jeeple Tour. So this is another phase of the game that can be run simultaneously with everyone else. And what you're attempting to do here is gain excitement, because the more excitement you gain each round, the more money you're going to get paid out at the end of the round. And you're wanting to score victory points if possible. So I'm trying to think. I need a tile that's going to give me some victory points. Okay, yeah, this one. I knew I had one. All right. So let's just say, for example, I need some dinosaurs. These are not the correct dinosaurs. I'm just going to let you know right now. This is a mishmash, but it's just what I could grab easily. Let's say this is what your park looks like at the moment. So you have 3 tiles you can visit, and those tiles need to be adjacent to one another. So you need to be able to draw a continuous line through them, and that line cannot backtrack. So for example, once you leave the Welcome Center, you cannot pass back through the Welcome Center. So if you needed to hit all of these, for example, you would have to start either at the top of the bottom and then work your way around. You could not go Prehistoric Garden, Hadrosauruses, Amber Extraction, through the Welcome Center, and then back up here to Brontosauruses. Doesn't work like that. So they give you these tokens. In the instruction manual, it says to place one in the tile you just left, and then decide, and then you place it here, and then you decide, and you place it here. And then once you have moved onto a tile and you don't have one to place, then you stop. I personally don't like that method. It just seems silly in my opinion. So this is what I do. And take it or leave it. You can follow the instructions however you want. But what I like to do, because let's be honest, everybody is sitting there analysis paralysizing about where they're going to go. You know, once you have figured out where your Jeeple Tour is going to go, probably back and during the public actions phase, you're going to know where it's going to go. But you're not sitting here thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the Brontosauruses. Where should I go next? You know exactly where you're going to go. So this is what I like to do. I like to put the arrows between the 2 tiles. And then I would go here like this, and then I would go here like this. I lay them all out, and that's telling me I can go from here to here, here to here, and here to here. I've run out of arrow tokens, so I'm only going to be able to visit 3 places once I start my Jeeple Tour. That's just how I do it. You can choose to do it how they say to do it in the instruction manual. It's up to you. But once you've figured out your arrows, or you could lay them down one at a time, you're going to start moving your Jeeple. You're going to move it here. And we are going to count the number of dinosaurs we have here. We have 3. So you're going to get this cumulative amount of excitement. So 2, 4, 6 excitement. You're going to move that on the public notice track. And afterwards, you're going to take one of these highly talked about, highly conflictive, tiny little tokens, and you're going to place it right here. Now that means that in the future, your excitement level is going to be 1 less. So if we came back through here next turn, didn't add any dinosaurs, we're actually only going to get 5 excitement from that stop, because people have seen Brontosauruses before. They're not as exciting. You know, the whole aspect of increasing the boredom makes sense. I just don't understand why they made such tiny little tokens. But the first time, you get to count up your full amount of excitement. After that, you're going to have to roll the danger dice, at least for the dinosaurs that you visited. So you can see the dice match the color of the dinosaur, and obviously the red die has a lot more death symbols on it than the green die. Green die has a couple of 1s here, there, but it's mostly blank. Visiting the Brontosaurus is not that dangerous, but every now and then somebody gets stepped on. So you're going to have to roll this. It is chance. Most of the time it's going to be a blank, but it could be that. If it rolls that, or if it rolls that and you're visiting the T-Rex, you take that number of death tokens, add them to your pile, and you're going to have to hold on to them until the end of the game. That, now you have activated that tile. So let's move on to the next one here. This one here, to activate, we have to spend a worker. and it takes a specific worker, we can see that it takes a yellow meeple. So luckily we've saved one, and it says here, for each yellow meeple, choose a unique adjacent tile, and you get +1 victory points per plant eating dinosaur there. So look at how I set up my park. I would get 1, 2, 3 victory points right off the bat. You're also going to then get 1 excitement. And after you've claimed your excitement, you need to find one of these tiny little tokens, and whoops, you need to place it on here. So that if you come back through here again, you could activate this tile again, but it's just not going to generate any excitement, but you can still activate it to gain the victory points. Now, if for example, I come back through here and I place 2 workers down, I can count 1, 2, 3 victory points, and then a 4th one here. Because I placed 2 workers down, there's 2 slots, and I can choose 2 adjacent tiles. Now that would have taken a lot of planning. Also, you could do this. Say you filled up both of these paddocks and you want the 8 victory points. You could come through here, even though this is technically a negative number. You just have to have generated excitement already. In this instance, though, you're going to lose excitement. So as long as you are in the positive for excitement, say you went here first and you filled this up, so it was 2 + 2 + 2 + 1 minus 2, that's still a positive number. That's, you know, what is it, 5. You got 5, then you would come here and you actually just have to lose 1 excitement, but you could still place these 2 workers here, activate it, and get those victory points. But if you were to start here, say your tour started at the prehistoric garden, and so you started with 0 excitement, you cannot activate this tile because you can't go into the negative in it for excitement. All right, so then let's continue our tour. Again, we would go down here. We would do exactly the same thing that we did up here. We'd count up our excitement, we'd put down a boredom token, and then we'd roll our death die here. That's it for the Jeeple Tour. Now, a few caveats here is that 1, you can pass through a area and not activate it. So if we wanted to start here and then go here and here, and this was in the negative, we could just say, all right, we're not activating the prehistoric garden, we're just driving by. The boredom doesn't increase. If it's a paddock, you don't have to roll the death die. You're basically just using it. You're driving by it, but you're not getting any excitement from it. You're not getting any victory points from it. But sometimes it's inevitable that you have to pass through somewhere because you don't have the excitement to spend, or you don't want to risk the deaths. And that's pretty much it. Once you are finished with your Jeeple Tour, you're going to want to bring everything back to the Welcome Center. And there you go. And that's when you go through the kind of income and cleanup phases, and we will talk about those here in just a second. Okay, so during the final phase, the income and cleanup phase, you're going to do a few things. One is you're going to remove all of your worker meeples off of your boards, off of your special buildings and your private action spaces. You're going to bring back all your move tokens and put your Jeeple back on the Welcome Center. Then you're going to want to go through and you're going to want to claim each of your Jeeple bonuses. Now it's important that you do this before some other steps, because for example, you want to make sure that you gain security before you start comparing it against the threat level. Also at this point you would want to gain your DNA, gain your workers, your additional coins, so on and so forth. Now let's just say, for an example, throughout the last round we maybe accumulated this much excitement and our red player here earned some VP and jumped ahead of the blue player here. During the income phase, after you have claimed your Jeeple bonuses, you get to claim your income from that round based on your excitement. So you can see the blue player here would claim 5 coins for 5 excitement, and for 7 excitement you gain 6. So remember, look at the coins beneath not the actual excitement number. Then you would look down here and you would say, ooh, red player has surpassed, they're in the lead, so you're actually going to rearrange the turn order here. And then once everybody has paid attention here, claimed their income, this gets reset to 0, and you're going to want to push this, technically that should have been there, push this down the track. Now, at the end of the 3rd round, what you need to do is actually pick up your welcome center tile straight up, pull it up from the earth, and you're going to want to flip it over to your now park entrance. And what this has to do is go 3 spaces away, 3 tiles away, and again, sharing one edge with a tile that's already there in your park, but this is now where your Jeeple Tour is going to start from. So it's going to be an entirely different end of your park, which definitely helps with boredom and reaching those special buildings and dinosaur paddocks that you've recently built and are far away. But that also is going to leave a hole in your park. Now that hole does not have to be filled, but you can fill it with a building by purchasing it during the public's actions phase. It's entirely up to you, but just know that a hole is going to be there. Your park entrance is technically where your Jeeple Tour starts is going to move, and that happens only once at the end of round 3. So you only actually have 2 rounds or 2 Jeeple Tours where you start at the far end of the park. The only other thing you need to do during the cleanup phase is compare your threat to your security. Any amount that your threat is higher than your security, you have to claim a death token. There's no rolling the die. This just says 1 death. This would be 3 deaths here. But if your security level is at least equal to or higher than your threat level, then you're fine. No deaths, no death tokens. You are good to go. So that, again, done 5 times all the way through, is a game of Dinosaur World. The only thing that you need to then add to your scores at the end of the game is coins in the amount of 5. So every 5 coins you have left over at the end of the game, that's 1 victory point. And like I said before, your death tokens are going to make a difference. So looking at this end game scoring sheet here, it gives you all of the rules quite clearly. So the player with the fewest death tokens discards all of them. So even if you accumulated 13 deaths, as long as everyone else in the game accumulated more, those deaths are all forgotten. They are wiped away, no negative points for you. Everyone else also discards the same number of death tokens. So say you're playing a 3-player game and somebody has 13, somebody has 15, and somebody has 25. The person with 13 would wipe all theirs away, be free and clear, no negative points. The person with 15 would also wipe away 13 and end up with only 2 death tokens. And the person with 25 would have to, they would get to wipe away 13, but they'd still be stuck with 12 at the end of the day. So once you have gotten rid of the death tokens that you're allowed to, you look at this chart and you're going to lose VP based on this chart. So that person who had 2 left over is only going to lose 1 victory point. But the person who had 12 left over is going to lose 15 victory points, plus anything over 10 is an additional 3 per death token. So that would be an additional 6, 21 points they would lose. So you definitely get hit hard at the end of the game if you have a lot of deaths. Now, what I see a lot of the time is that people race around, they lap the board, and they're at like 127 points, but then they lose, 36 points, and they end up dropping back behind people, and the person who played it safe won the game. Now, that doesn't always happen. I've seen both strategies win. So, but that's it. Most of your scoring happens during the game, so there's very little to calculate at the end of the game. Again, it's really just additional VP for coins and then taking into account your deaths. So now that we understand how to play the game of Dinosaur World, basic multiplayer, let's talk about what the differences are when you're playing solo. Your actions and the actions that you're going to take and how you go about running all your phases essentially stays the same. But at the beginning of every round, you are going to take the top card of the AI deck and you're going to flip it over. You're going to make it so that the objectives are at the top and unreadable essentially. So we're looking now at these 4 windows here at the bottom, always starting with some arrows on the left. Then they're always going to have DNA dice followed by buildings and paddocks numbers. So let's work through this left to right. This first these first set of symbols here is movement for your escaped dinosaurs, and then an area that your dinosaurs will escape to. So the first thing you do is look at the big yellow arrow. You only look for dinosaurs that are already escaped in your park. So let's say, for example, this is what our park looked like. Say one of them had roamed around and gotten into the Welcome Center. We would now look to see, can this dinosaur move directly down? It can. So it's actually going to wander here into the Hadrosaurus paddock. It does not go into one of the slots. It just needs to stay around the outside so that you realize that it's an escaped dinosaur. If, for example, however, if he was already here, say he had started here and then worked his way down here, and this was the symbol that came up, he has no legal tile to move onto, so he stays put. Also, if, for example, and this is not a Hadrosaurus, but say this is a Hadrosaurus, and we receive this card, and he were to move back towards his original pen, he does not move back into the paddock, right? He's not going to go back in willingly. He's just going to simply mill around the outside, and he still needs to be rescued. So after you have addressed any dinosaurs that have already escaped, that are already loose in the park, that's the big yellow arrow, you look to the small red arrows. Now in this instance, there's only one threat of escape, which is better than 2. Sometimes there's 2. But in this instance, you're going to look for every dinosaur paddock. Can a dinosaur go, essentially to the southwest, according to this arrow? So this dinosaur cannot. There's not a legal tile right here. If he have been here, if these 2 tiles have been switched, then yes, he could have escaped this way. But in this instance, neither one of these tiles, neither one of these dinosaurs can escape. So you actually aren't going to have any dinosaurs escape this round. That's a bonus for you. Now let's look at let's find a different card here. Okay, so here's a good example. Let's say you get this card and it's the second round of the game, so you just put some dinosaurs in. They're nice and fresh in their paddocks, so none of them have escaped. You can essentially ignore the yellow arrow at the top, but then we come down here and we see, oh, the escaping, so remember this, the yellow arrow is moving dinosaurs that have already escaped. The red arrow is moving dinosaurs out of their paddock. So we look and we would say, okay, this guy can, and you always take the far right dinosaur and you would move him down. Whereas this dinosaur, however, has no legal movement down, so he does not escape. And now essentially we have completed the escaped dinosaur window on this card. The reason you have the alternate factions colored cubes sitting by is that when this dinosaur escapes, you place this right here in his paddock, because you can still make what were these guys, the brontosauruses. You could still make brontosauruses. You could still make this 4th one. You just have to fill this 4th slot, because this guy has to go back into there. Essentially, the 4th slot is usually the more difficult of the DNA. So that's the only reason you keep these cubes handy, is just to remind you of which paddocks dinosaurs have escaped from. And that essentially is dinosaurs escaping in a nutshell. You can see, however, that there are some cards, for example, with 2 of these red arrows at the bottom. So what you would want to do here is look to see, okay, can any dinosaurs escape this way? No. Can any dinosaurs escape up? Well, this one can, but this one cannot. So we resolved this. But if, let's say, for example, these 2 were switched like this, and and this is how our park looked when we drew this card. We have no escaped dinosaurs, so again, we can ignore the yellow arrow. Then we look here, and the first arrow on the left is down this direction. This dinosaur can escape. And let's even just, I know these are the wrong color, just bear with me. Pretend they're both green, or we can do this here. That's a better visual. There we go. All right, so this first dinosaur, so technically it would be this one. This first dinosaur escapes down to the left. We look at this paddock, no dinosaur can escape to the left, so we're clean. Then we go to this one, this next arrow. Well, there's already a dinosaur that has escaped out of this paddock. You know, we can tell by that cube. So you can only ever lose one dinosaur per paddock at the beginning of each round. So we leave this guy alone. Even though this guy technically could escape in that direction, we have already lost one dinosaur out of that paddock. We can, however, look up here and see, oh, does he have an option? He still doesn't. So now we are done. So you always work through your arrows top to bottom, left to right, and you always look at every paddock, but as soon as you lose a dinosaur out of a paddock, it's no longer eligible to have a dinosaur escape out of it until the next round. So the remainder of this card tells you how many DNA dice you're going to roll. So normally in a 2-player game, you would roll 4 dice every time. But in this instance, sometimes it's only going to give you 3, sometimes it's going to give you 4. I think there may be even a 5 card on here. That's to represent someone beating you to a certain die. So instead of them just saying roll 4 every time and take away die, you know, in slot 1, they just tell you to only roll a certain number of die out. Then these last 2 slots are always going to be for special buildings and dino paddocks. This is how many you're going to discard at the end of the round. So you don't actually discard any at the beginning of the round. Nobody's going to steal anything from you. So what you see is always what you will get. But say, for example, if something was in that first slot on either of the boards at the end of a normal game, or at the end of a round of a normal game, it would still be there. It would just be at the far end slot. Well, in this case, you're probably going to discard all of them. And you will notice that sometimes, let's find a card that shows that. Okay, for example, here, it's telling you to discard 4 dinosaur paddocks. Well, there's only ever 3 dinosaur paddocks out at a time. So you're actually going to discard the 3 that are face up and the top one of the draw stack. You're just going to go ahead and discard that one away, never even get the option to buy it. You'll notice that sometimes there's a 5 for example, here's a 5 for the special buildings. So you wipe away the entire special buildings board and the top one of the draw stack. This one's actually kind of nice because it helps you get to those B and C tiles faster. But that is essentially it. That is all you need to do. Again, you need to remember that you are looking to complete your objectives, if possible, by gaining the bonus by completing them within a certain round. And you're really just attempting to beat your own score at that point. And Dinosaur Island was always a beat your own score, and this AI is no different. Now, let's talk briefly, let's scoot this over here and just talk briefly about how you can get dinosaurs back in your pen. Let's say this guy was out here and he escaped from there, and so there we go. Now you could, where'd my specialist cards go? You could, for example, have hired the Dino Wrangler here. Now the Dino Wrangler, at any point in time, you could commit a yellow worker to there, and he could return up to 2. Here he's just going to return that one, and it will put him back, and it's going to gain you 2 excitement if you use him. But say you hired 2 different specialists, you don't have a Dino Wrangler on hand, what you're going to need to do is, you don't have to, but if your Jeeple route passes through a tile with an escaped dinosaur on it, you can pay any Meeple, any color, so white, green, purple, yellow, doesn't matter, any color Meeple to return that dinosaur back to his pen. If a dinosaur is escaped and sitting on one of your special buildings, you cannot activate it until the dinosaur is gone. So if this Brontosaurus was sitting right here in front of the Amber Extraction Center, you can't take a tour into the Amber Extraction Center. There's a giant Brontosaurus sitting in front of the door. So you need to get rid of him first, and then you could spend your blue worker to activate the tile. So just keep that in mind. And at the end of every Jeeple Tour, for any dinosaur that is rampaging around your park, you need to roll a danger die. So keep that in mind, that you could leave a Brontosaurus running around outside of his paddock and it may not hurt you because you're only rolling the green die. But one last caveat is that you are going to lose 3 victory points per escaped dinosaur at the end of the game. So you don't necessarily want to have them all be just rummaging around your park, killing off people. But that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for our explanation of how to play Dinosaur World and the changes and slight differences in how to play Dinosaur World solo. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, including a look at how I have chosen to store the Dinosaur World base game in the box while holding on to the provided plastic insert, that video is coming up soon. Also, I'm going to take a look at a closer look at the expansion packs and how you play with those and how those are included into the game. And of course, if you are interested in any of the Dinosaur Island Roar and Write content, that is also going to be coming up on the channel. So lots to consider if you are interested in either of these Pandasaurus games. So please consider subscribing to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.